Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the George W. Norris Legislative Chamber for the 57th day of the 108th Legislature second session. Our chaplain for today is Senator Hardin. Please rise.
Heavenly Father, we praise you. Your thoughts are higher than mine, and your ways are higher than mine. We confess that we need you. We have great intentions. They fall short. The things we do flawed. We're broken. And we need your help. We thank you for this day. It's the only today we get. We thank you for health good enough to get us here. We thank you that this world is not all there is. We thank you that you have provided for our brokenness. We thank you for the cross. We thank you for the empty tomb. We thank you for your Spirit who dwells within. We thank you for each moment and living with us in those moments. And we come to you and rely on you. We ask for your direction. We ask for wisdom, the right application of knowledge, and the courage to do it. And we pray all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
I recognize Senator Lowe for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will you please join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I call to order the 57th day of the 108th Legislature second session. Senators, please record your presence. Roll call. Record, Mr. Clerk.
There's quorum present, Mr. President.
Are there any corrections for the journal?
I have no corrections, sir.
Are there any messages, reports, or announcements?
Mr. President, there are. Your Committee on Enrollment and Review reports Legislative Bill 1300, 13A, 686, 1195, 662A, 1317, 1317A to select files, some having E&R amendments. Your Committee on Enrollment and Review also reports Legislative Bill 20, 20A, 52A, 62, 71, 71A, 164, 164A, 358, 358A, 874, 904, 904A, 934, 1031, 1031A, 1073, 1074, 1074A, 1301, 1301A, 1335, 1344, 1368, 1368A as correctly engrossed and placed on final reading or final reading second. That's all I have this time, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh would like to recognize the physician of the day, Dr. Lilia Cherkatsky of Omaha. Please stand and be recognized by your Nebraska Legislature. While the legislature is in session and capable of transacting business, I propose to sign and do hereby sign legislative resolutions 445, 446, 447, 448, 449, 450, 451, 452, 453, 454, 455, 456, 457, 458, 459, 460, 461, 462, and 463. Senator Arch, you're recognized for a message.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, just a quick reminder. Today's lunch hour is an hour. It's not an hour and a half. We will break between 12 and 1. We'll be back here at 1 o'clock. We need that half hour. And tonight, I am assuming is going to be a late night because what's going to happen as we go through these select bills, they're going to go upstairs for the revisers to work through. Those bills have to come back to us before we adjourn. We have to have a quorum at that point, and we have to allow those to be brought to the floor so that we can have our layover day. So I just wanted to let you know what's coming. It's going to be a late night tonight and only 1 hour for lunch today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Clerk, please proceed to the agenda.
Mr. President, select file Legislative Bill 62A. There are no E&R amendments. Senator Dorn would move to amend with AM 3390.
Senator Dorn, you're recognized to open.
And I will yield my time to Senator Michaela Cavanaugh.
Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you have 9 minutes and 55 seconds.
Thank you. I will not need that time. So this is the amendment. We moved 62 from select to final last week, and this is just the A bill catching up. It was a shell bill previously, and Senator Dorn filed the amendment for me this morning. It is appropriating $11,470 from the general funds for some technology updates to do the Medicaid reports. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh. Senator Kauth, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I ask Senator Michaela Cavanaugh some questions about this?
Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, would you yield?
Yes.
So when we discuss this on general file, the goal of your bill is to move translating services from the managed care providers to DHHS, correct?
No.
Did we change that?
No, this is to use the managed care excess funds to pay for the translation services that are being provided by doctors currently.
Okay, so it's tapping into managed care funds because that is part of the contract, correct?
It is part of the contract that they can offer these services. They don't have to offer these services. And it is coming at a cost to the medical community. And I'm not talking about major hospitals. I'm talking about small town doctors who need to have translation services for their patients. And it is not being handled quickly or efficiently. And it's costing the providers more money of canceled appointments and rescheduling and delayed healthcare access. And so since there is the excess fund, it is a more streamlined way to reimburse the providers directly for these services.
So it's not going to be paid by DHHS, correct?
Nope, it is paid by the Medicaid excess fund.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Senator Kauth. See no one else in the queue. Senator Doran, you are recognized to close and waive closing on the amendment. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3390. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
29 ayes, no nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
AM 3390 is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 62A be advanced to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. LB 62A is advanced for ENR engrossing. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, select file legislative bill 1344A. I have no ENR amendment. Senator Wayne would move to amend with AM 3352.
Senator Wayne, you're recognized to open on your motion.
Question. Oh, not yet? Okay, sorry. This is just a simple A bill. Simple A bill to catch up. It actually reduces the amendment reduces the overall impact by a little bit over in half. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Wayne would move to amend with the amendment with FA 398.
Senator Wayne, you're recognized to open on the floor amendment.
Again, this amendment is to clarify, is to cut the overall fiscal note. It's less than $1 million, like some 800,000, not even that, 600,000. So it cuts it over in half. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you,
Senator Wayne. See no one else in the queue, you're recognized, Senator Wayne, and waive closing. Members, the question is the adoption of FA 398. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
36 ayes, no nays on adoption of the floor amendment, Mr. President.
FA 398 is adopted. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Wayne, you're recognized to close on AM 3352 and waive. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3352. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
34 ayes, no nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
The amendment is adopted.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator.
Senator Ballard, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1344A be advanced to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, General File, Legislative Bill 13. 63. It's a bill for an act relating, introduced by Senator McDonald. It's a bill for an act relating to revenue and taxation. Changes provisions relating to the rate and the disbursement of the documentary stamp, the Military Base Development and Support Fund, the Nebraska Film Office Fund, the Innovation Hub Cash Fund, and the Economic Recovery Contingency Fund. Harmonized provisions provides an operative date and repeals the original section. Bill was read for the first time on January 17th of this year and referred to the Revenue Committee. That committee placed the bill on general file with committee amendments. Mr. President, pending at the time the legislature left the bill was the committee amendment itself due to a reconsideration motion from Senator Wayne.
Senator McDonald, you're recognized for a 1-minute refresh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. In that time, and since I have just 1 minute, I will punch in to talk longer, but I want to thank a number of people, and one is Senator Clements. You'll see that we have had discussions, which we started on earlier, was about the idea of the inheritance tax and what can we do with the counties. And at one point, those discussions had stopped, and working with Senator Clements, we have decided to amend, and you'll see that in Amendment 3399, that now the inheritance tax is part of this dollar at 65 cents. The counties are now on board with the amendment. We currently have the 35 cents in the documentary stamp that was placed in this in the bill based on an amendment from the Revenue Committee. So the 35 cents, I'll go through that breakdown also of where those dollars are going. But I want to start off by thanking the people that I've worked with. Senator Wayne for reconsideration to keep this bill alive.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Senator Linehan, you're recognized for a 1-minute refresh on the committee amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wasn't prepared for this. I should have been. Would Senator McDonald yield to a question?
Senator McDonald, would you yield?
Yes.
Senator McDonald, I think you've had a very busy weekend, as have I. Have you had discussions with Senator Clements about a way forward on this bill?
Yes, and based on the numbers as of Friday, we thought we were going to be at 55 cents. By Friday evening, we had found out, again, working with the counties, that their comfort level was at 65 cents. So over the weekend, we did shave a few more cents in a number of different areas to keep that total within $1. So yes, I've had a number of discussions this morning and yesterday with Senator Clements and others, and we believe we have something that takes a step into the future by eliminating inheritance tax.
So what I would ask is for everyone to...
That's the time, senators.
Oh, great.
Senator Wayne, you're recognized for a 1-minute refresh on your motion.
Thank you. I filed a reconsideration so we could allow some negotiations. From what I understand about the agreement, I am still not in favor. As long as the iHub is in there, I will be opposed to this bill. And thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Moving to the queue, Senator Wayne, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, there's a couple things. One, I wasn't a part of any negotiation, which is interesting since I'm the one who did the reconsideration to allow for the negotiation. But nevertheless, Senator McKinney brought iHubs 3 years ago. We passed the bill. The purpose of the iHub was to create a mechanism to allow small businesses and communities to focus on innovation. Since then, there have been 3 iHubs that are established, 1 in Lincoln and 2 in Omaha. We have approximately $30 million in the Omaha area through the inland port that will allow for Innovation District of bringing those iHubs together and creating some synergies around there. LB 1344 is a bill that touches iHubs, but it does so to open the applications back up for the rest of the state. But at the end of the day, to establish a permanent funding source, while as much as I appreciate that, I think we have to figure out what iHubs are doing before we already do that. And so I will be adamantly opposed to this bill if the iHubs are in there, because I don't think we should be taking money from the doc stamp to putting it into something else like that. I might be open to an idea and palatable to an idea of using what's labeled for an iHub to go to an inland port, because most of your inland port districts, such as the one out by North Platte, while they're generating in Hershey's jobs, there is a need for housing. So I can see how we can put a housing component in an inland port and make it work. But at the end of the day, we're talking about a sales tax increase for your homes. When you sell your home, you're going to pay more. And the purpose of that whole entire trust of the doc stamp was to help with affordable housing and to help with more housing. There is a behavioral health component that was established years ago that's still there. But I'm not in favor of moving this money to an iHub when iHubs currently have not proven themselves to get more funding than we've already set aside 2 years ago. And so that just doesn't make sense for us to do that. And I'm adamantly opposed to that. In addition, I believe one of the amendments I hear talking about is for qualified health centers, particularly the one in Omaha. We just gave them a lot of money through the grants. Charles Drew got $20 million, and One World, I believe, got $17 million roughly. I could be wrong. I'm looking at Vargas, but he's looking at his phone. He's getting the numbers. So we already gave the qualified census health community centers, or qualified health centers in Omaha, significant a lot of money through our grant program that this body already approved. So $20 million to One World. So both of the ones in Omaha total got $40 million. That's 20 each, one for North and one for South. And so I don't know about establishing a permanent funding right now until we see what they did with the current money that's going on. And so to me, it's just, I think, being fiscally smart not to do that. And so if Senator McDonald is willing to strike those two provisions, or on the one with the iHub, talk to Senator Jacobson and myself maybe about inland ports, because he has one that's already blooming out in North Platte. I know Grand Island with Senator Aguilar is either establishing or trying to establish one. And remember, this funding can't go to Omaha's iHub that they just applied for, because in the bill that I have, Omaha can't even apply for these funds for 3 to 4 years. And that was the balance that Senator Jacobson and I did to make sure Omaha wasn't going after the money we set aside already for Western Nebraska. So again, I think there's some things we got to work on. I'm willing to work on it from general to select, only if I get a commitment right now that those things will be removed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator Kauth, you're recognized to speak.
I yield my time to Senator McDonald.
Senator McDonald, you have 4 minutes, 55 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Kauth. So just a couple kind of refresher of where we are right now. Where we currently are, based on the doc stamp, is the counties receive 50 cents, affordable housing 95 cents, site and building fund 25 cents, homeless shelters 25 cents, behavioral health 30 cents. So what we've added was the military support for 5 cents, the iHub for 8 cents, grant services for 5 cents, federal qualified health centers for 3 cents. We totally eliminated the film office because revenue had worked on that during some of their hearings. So where we're at, we're going from 225 to 325. Senator Clements is actually handing out this document. And of course, as I started off, the 65 cents for the counties based on the step forward in eliminating inheritance tax. Now, of course, I'm going to work on it with all of you between general and select. And also, I really appreciate Senator Wayne with his reconsider motion the other night, because at that point he was opposed to it, but at least he kept the discussions going. So I'm going to talk, but I am adamant about what we're trying to do here and what we've been working on since the fall, and going through the different programs and looking at just the military funding. And I can talk more about this, was the idea that you have 2,000 people separating or retiring from Offutt Air Force Base every year. The Skill Bridge program, which Skill Bridge programs give the opportunity of the military to pay Jane Doe that's leaving the military. For 6 months before they leave, they are considered with full pay and full benefits from the military, but they come into our community and they start working, let's say as an accountant. The point is that partnership gives 6 months experience paid for by the military before they leave their service to our country, but it also gets them ready to have a job upon being discharged from the military and stay within our community. So that's just a real exciting program that's been going on around the country, across the country with the iHubs, and looking at the investments people have made. Federal government has authorized $10 billion to community iHubs that support and can be leveraged locally. Generally, net job growth comes from that entrepreneurship. Looking at what's happened over the last 10 years, used leverage of $83 billion that's available from the federal government over the last 10 years. So going through the grant office. In the grant office, the reason we put dollars towards that, and this has been agreed upon by the governor's team, and again, it started working on it towards the last summer and into the fall, was the idea that last year, approximately $2 billion that we could have applied for that we did not from the federal government. Not saying we would have received all those $2 billion in grants, but at least we would have had a grant office that was paying attention to that, applying for it, and that was pretty much the number one issue and priority with the governor's office, and logically so. So working through where we were with the dollar, talking about, again, the only thing that's not being included now is the film office, but looking at trying to have some funding that's sustainable going into the future. And the last time that this was adjusted was 2005. If you look at just the CPI since 2005, this has gone up 57% for the cost of living since 2005, when it was adjusted to 2.25. This started in 1965 on 2.25 for a $1,000 valuation, but again, over this time frame since 2005, it's gone up 59% with the consumer price index.
1 minute.
So looking at what we were trying to do, what we still are trying to do with these programs, and knowing that we cannot tie the hands of the next legislature. If the counties come back and say that, okay, the 65 cents did not work, or potentially with the inheritance tax and what's going on, and this was an average of 5 years with the inheritance tax for the counties, what they looked at for their potential loss, then we adjust it down or we adjust it up. And that's not for me and some of us others that aren't going to be here, but for you going forward, and other people sitting in these desks, they can always look at that and make adjustments based on the data and where we are throughout the state in the future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Senator DeBoer, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was wondering if Senator McDonald will answer some questions.
Senator McDonald, will you yield to some questions?
Yes.
Senator McDonald, I'm not entirely sure what you were saying with respect to some of these changes. The 65 cents that's going to the county, I thought Senator Clements said we weren't going to do the inheritance tax. Is that to offset the change or not the repeal, or what is that 65 cents meant to offset?
Inheritance tax. So you're correct.
Go ahead.
There was discussions early on with Senator Clements and others and the counties. What we did, based on when we had the reconsideration motion and stopped the discussion the other night, was I started working with Senator Clements and the counties and saying, can we still rescue the inheritance tax? But when I say that, can we still take a step forward of eliminating the inheritance tax? And they came back with the dollar of first was 55 cents. Now, I don't want you to confuse people,
wait,
but current.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when you say you still want to be able to talk about getting rid of the inheritance tax, you think that's still a live bill?
We are amending, if you look at, and I should have said this, I thought I did at the beginning, look at Amendment 3399. That has the discussion about the inheritance tax. It's an amendment that we placed on this, going from the current handout that you'll see that Senator Clements handed out. Currently, the counties are getting 50 cents. We're moving them up 65 cents to $1.15.
I get that that's the offset money. What's happening to the inheritance tax? Are you putting ones and twos together, or what's happening?
Yeah, so we are reducing it. The current numbers, we're reducing it down to 8%. So currently on the reduction of the inheritance tax rates of Class 2 and Class 3 is the beneficiaries to 8% down from 15%, and respectively another 8% down from 11% on the class 2. So we're dropping it from 15 and 11 to 8.
All right, so that answers my question there. Then my general question is, by changing the dollar, adding $1 to the dock stamp, that's $1 per $1,000 of the price of the house, is that correct?
So basically, you can look at every 5 cents is valued at $874,000.
But if I'm buying a house, or if I'm selling a house, I pay $1 per $1,000.
Yes.
So if I'm selling a $300,000 house, I'll pay $300.
Yes.
I mean, this will incrementally, but it will raise the valuations of the homes because they'll have to sell them for a little bit more. Is that right?
Potentially, it's been going on since 1965, but we are raising it from $1.25 to $2.25 for a total of $1. So that will impact it, yes.
Okay. All right, I'm still thinking about this. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Senators. Senator McDonald, you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. You want to go ahead and work with the attorney? So yeah, I know this is somewhat confusing and where we were, but also trying not to give up on the inheritance tax. So we start off with a bill that was going from $2.25 to $1. And as I mentioned, you can look at these handouts now that Senator Clements gave you, that approximately each 5 cents is worth about $874,000. We've got the agreement with the counties now on the inheritance tax at 65 cents. So the original bill I introduced was $1. Revenue Committee dropped it down to 35 cents. And the things that were listed were, that was included was the military support that I just went through with the Skill Bridge program, the iHub, the grant services, federal qualified health centers, no more film office. So that adds up to 35 cents. The 65 cents is based on trying to take that step to eliminate the inheritance tax. So again, the documentary stamp, the history on it based on going back to 1965. There's a documentary stamp began, was a cornerstone of some states' financial strategy. Then the last time there was a discussion, maybe not a discussion, but an adjustment was 2005, where it was moved to $2.25 per 1,000 evaluation, highlighting our commitment to addressing the community needs and promoting statewide growth. That's given a 59% increase in the consumer price index since 2005. This amendment proposes a modest increase in the documentary stamp. This adjustment aims to generate sustainable revenue for our counties and facilities, a significant reduction in the inheritance tax, thereby balancing the needs of the Nebraskans with the fiscal responsibility. So we will continue to work on this here in the next couple days between general and select. What I'm asking is for you to give us that opportunity, and this is a lot to digest. But I also appreciate Senator Clements and others that were passionate and working on the inheritance tax throughout the years, and I was willing. I told them early on in the session that I was also supportive of eliminating the inheritance tax. And here at the end of our 60-day session, here we have an opportunity. There's been a lot of compromise for the people that had worked on this. Again, having the support of the governor and his team has been very helpful, but people have made adjustments. And if you look at those adjustments, again, going down to the military support at 5 cents, the iHub at 8 cents, the grant services at 5 cents, the federally qualified health centers at 3 cents, and totally eliminating the film office. That's how we created the opportunity for more revenue to help offset the inheritance tax. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Senator Clements, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I support the reconsider motion, and we're going to need to get to AM 3399, which is what's being discussed, so I'll keep it short. I'm going to support the amendment. The inheritance, I did give Senator McDonald my inheritance tax bill, and he incorporated in with the dock tax bill. The inheritance tax proposal that I had was going to be 1% for children, 5% for nieces and nephews, and 5% for all others. There isn't enough, there's too much of a revenue drop, so this amendment will have 1% for children, 8% nieces and nephews, 8% all others, which is about a 9.5% reduction of inheritance tax expense overall. And the amendment 3399, that's my calculation is about an $8 million loss to the counties. This dock tax provides $11 million more to the county, so it more than restores the revenue loss by these inheritance tax rates. And so I also am going to have some heartburn on the iHub. I spoke of that earlier, but I'd like to get this to select and see if we can negotiate some of those other details. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Senator Jacobson, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too have concerns about the 35 cents that would go to the iHubs. And like Senator Clements, I am going to support the bill to select, but I will oppose the bill on select if indeed there's money going to the iHubs at this point. My primary concern is that I support getting the inheritance tax reduced. I've said that before. I also, as much as I know, there are many who do not like raising the dock stamps. They haven't been raised for a long time. I think, as what's been accurately pointed out, the dock stamps are paid on the seller side, not the buyer side. So it doesn't impact the cost of purchasing the home. There are some people that are saying, well, the seller's going to raise the price of their house. Well, good luck selling it, because houses are going to sell generally at the appraised value. Yes, there are people that are making offers above appraised value, but when it comes to lending, we're going to loan a percentage of the appraised value. That tends to get people back to the appraised value. If you look at from that standpoint, if you raised property taxes as a result of eliminating the inheritance tax, we're going to certainly raise the cost of housing to the buyer. And I think that's where we all should have concern. So my point with this is that I believe that the counties are currently collecting 50 cents of the $2.25 or the 2.25 inheritance tax, our dock stamp rate that's out there today. If we're going to collect any more, it needs to go to the counties where the dock stamps are collected. Okay, where the dock stamps are collected. This 35 cents would mean that Lincoln County and all the counties in my district would be paying 35 cents and sending it to Omaha. They're not going to like that. I don't like that. Right now, the dock stamps are predominantly kept in the county, or it's going to affordable housing for the most part. And then we do benefit from that as the way those dollars are distributed. So I have concerns about where the dollars would go. I have concerns that the iHubs aren't ready for new funding at this point. And I would tell you, if we're going to do anything, as Senator Wayne pointed out, it ought to be eligible. We ought to be making the inland ports eligible. But at this point, the challenge in front of us is how do we get the inheritance tax ultimately eliminated? As Senator Clements indicated, these dollars would be sufficient to more than offset what he's proposing in the step down of the inheritance tax. But let's remember that the goal is to eliminate the inheritance tax altogether. And there is a limit to what you can do on dock stamp fees. So I would be adamantly opposed, kicking and screaming, on any money being diverted anywhere other than the counties or the current uses of dock stamp fees. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator Aguilar has some guests in the north balcony, fourth graders from Trinity Lutheran in Grand Island. Please stand and be recognized by your Nebraska Legislature. Senator Dover, you are recognized to speak.
Yeah, I've been licensed against 1983 with my real estate license. This is one industry I do understand, and I would just stand up and speak in opposition to any increase in the dock stamps that does not go toward housing. I've heard different arguments. I've heard the dock stamps haven't been raised in a while. Well, who believes that for a second? The dock stamps are based on the sales price of the house. It was $2.25 or per thousand they're part of. And have everyone noticed what's going on with home prices? There's no way anyone can make an argument that the dock stamps haven't gone up in a while, unless they're making a weak argument and speaking specifically to the amount that's charged. But dock stamps have gone up. They will continue to go up. I have a bill that didn't make it out of committee. I'll be bringing it back next year. I think people talk about housing. So I would say this is, on a number of levels, I would speak against this. So do we have housing? Is there housing a problem in Nebraska? Well, we all know it is. So why are we going to tax houses? I like when we can, if we're going to tax something, let's benefit it, right? So let's tie the dock stamp to housing. And so in my bill, what it does, it's 25 cents. That's basically on $1 million home. I think that's somewhere around, I think $350. And so that does increase the cost, and I would fight that too. But the thing is, the money goes to only one thing in a separate trust fund, because I don't want to mix it in the other trust funds, because the money gets commingled and spent on different things. The best bang for your buck is down payment assistance. There's a lot of people out there that can qualify for the loan, but they don't have the money. So I would sincerely ask everyone to vote this bill down and wait until next year for those that'll be there and support my bill of 25 cents for down payment assistance. And I look over this. I mean, I understand, I believe I understand. I won't speak that I do understand, but I think Senator McDonald is basically looking for a funding source, as we all do for our bills. And if these things, I think these things are important, but these things are important, why can't we fund them with general funds? Why can't we fund them a different way than going into dock stamps? Again, I also agree with Senator Jacobson. The inheritance tax is not fair. It needs to go away. This is not the way to do it. Dock stamps is a tax to the seller upon the sale of their house based on the purchase price. The dock stamps need to go toward housing. And so again, I would ask you not to vote. And here's the thing is, we're having a conversation this morning how we take bad bills, we try to make them better. I mean, there's certain things I think that we can agree on. There's certain things perhaps that shouldn't be done. And I think we need to look at kind of generalities to a degree. I think that makes good decisions. And I'll say the generality is this: dock stamps, that's a tax on houses, should only go to benefit houses. So again, I'd ask you to not move this bill forward. It's a bad bill. We just need to end it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dover. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise in opposition to AM 3250, LB 1363, and the pending AM 3399. Last week, the Speaker made an announcment that any addition of a bill at this stage would jeopardize a bill moving forward, which is why I oppose AM 3399 because I oppose the inheritance tax, but I also oppose that we must be consistent. And if we're not going to allow other bills to be amended onto a bill at this stage in the session, then that should be true for everyone, not just some of us. I rise opposed to the dock stamp increase and the utilization of the dock stamp for a couple of reasons. Taking you back to when we debated the budget, this is continuing to fund government functions through fees. We saw the Appropriations Committee put forward a budget that cut funding to behavioral health, and now we are going to use the dock stamp to fund behavioral health. This is a systemic issue that we are trying, or this administration is trying, to fund government by saying that they have lowered government's general fund spending, lower income taxes, but they are still funding things fully because they are putting it through fees, which is no different than a sales tax increase. We should not and cannot fund government through fees and taxes. It's disingenuous way of saying that we are lowering taxes and that we are lowering our spending. We are not. We are just shifting it from here to here. So I will be opposed to this motion to reconsider the amendment, the pending amendment, and the underlying bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh. Senator Vargas, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you very much. I do want to thank Senator McDonald for two reasons. One, I had a conversation before the end of this when we first started talking that I wanted to see more investments into housing. And second, I didn't support the bill in its current form. So I know he understands that. We've always had a respectful conversation. But at the end of the day, I'm not in support of the reconsideration motion. I do want to give the opportunity for negotiation because I think if you're increasing the dock stamp tax, more money should be going to housing. And as it stands right now, it looks like 10 cents of the dollar is going to, or a little bit more than, let me make sure I'm getting the right number here. No, it is 10 cents of the dollar increase is going to housing, to Senator Dover's point. And I would want to see more of the money going to housing if you're going to be putting this fee or tax on homeowners for the dock stamp tax increasing. It should go to more affordable housing and not to offset for the inheritance tax. And I do raise the same concern that regardless of where you are or not on the inheritance tax, that it itself is a separate bill that is being amended onto this bill. And I was under the assumption that that wasn't going to happen here starting this week. The amendment that Senator McDonald's worked on, I'm not necessarily in support of it. I think I'm opposed only right now because it includes some of the language that Senator Wayne mentioned about the iHub. And again, not enough is going to housing. I know there's some other things in here which I do support, and that would be great. I think this is a good opportunity if we were going to put more money towards housing, that you could increase this another 15 cents on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and create sub-programs for rural and middle income. And then you can put some new money into those programs. I have said that to Senator McDonald. He was open-minded to it. It's just whether or not the committee was. But the reason I was against the bill, the existing amendment revenue, is it actually was less money for affordable housing. It created a couple subsections, and so less money was going to affordable housing. And there still was a clarifier that needs to be split evenly among congressional districts, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So that's why I was originally against 3250. I'm still against that. But I wanted to make it clear, if there is a negotiation that's happening, I would want to see more funding, not a lot more funding, but $3 million, $4 million more that can go to the rural and the middle income workforce housing would be great. I think that would be a good step. I'm not opposed to the other components, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear on my opposition and not filibustering. Just wanted to put it in the record, and appreciate Senator McDonald's work on it, and wanted to make sure to put that in record. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Senator McDonald, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. And also thank you, Senator Vargas. We've had discussions on this, and of course, he's always been passionate about the housing issue. And again, having those discussions, hopefully having the opportunity between general or selected, if we can move it to select, I would definitely continue to talk with Senator Vargas about that. So I also want to apologize for possibly misspeaking and causing some confusion. Is we did not take Senator Clement's bill and just combine them. We did not do that. Is there definitely parts in the concept of Senator Clement's bill to eliminate inheritance tax? Absolutely. But that's not something we did, but through the negotiations and bringing up different ideas. And it wasn't only Senator Clements asking, as you see in the total package here with the documentary stamp amounts. But I just want to make sure that's clear. Senator Arch, would you yield to a question?
Senator Arch, will you yield?
Yes, I will.
Do you believe that, based on the work we've done, and I know we've kept you appraised to what we've been doing, and you've had some feedback, that we've procedurally we've done this the correct way, and based on also following the direction you've given us, all of us, working on bills and combining them?
Yes, thanks for the question. I want to clarify my announcement from last week, because I think there's been quite a bit of discussion about it even this morning. What I asked last week was that when you have a bill on the floor, that you not allow and that others do not take another bill and amend that bill into your bill, regardless of germaneness on the floor. So, because the constraint that we have is bill drafters, and I mentioned it this morning, we have to wait until bill drafters bring these bills back. An amendment that is drafted upstairs to a bill has already been checked in that way. Attaching another bill onto a bill on the floor, amending that onto a full bill onto the floor, it sounds simple. It sounds like a cut and paste, and that was my understanding. Is you just take that bill and you just amend it into that bill. The problem is that when they start to integrate that bill, they have to check all those references, and we have bills upstairs that are 140 pages right now. So my request was not to take a full bill. That is not what Senator McDonald is doing. He has an amendment where he's taken approximately 50% of language from another bill. That amendment is already folding in. He is not amending another bill onto his bill on the floor. And I just wanted to make that distinction because I know there's been some confusion. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Speaker Arch. Senator McDonald, you have 2 minutes, 8 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just following up with what the speaker mentioned. Amendment 3399 is where we're trying to get today. Again, going back, I appreciate Senator Wayne's reconsideration to continue the discussions. What the Revenue Committee originally worked on with the 35-cent increase, going back to Amendment 3250. But what we're talking about today is not up on the board yet. It's Amendment 3399. So what I'm asking is for us to get there, have the support for that, move it on to select and continue the discussions. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Senator Dover, you're recognized to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify some numbers here. I think I might have quoted the incorrect number, but basically, if we look at two homes, I think they're probably good numbers to use. $500,000 home and $1 million home. At $1 million home currently, the dock stamps would be $2,250, and obviously on a $500,000 home, it would be half of that at $1,125. The proposed increase, doesn't matter whether it's $1 million home or a $500,000 home, is a 44% increase. Can I repeat that? A 44% increase in dock stamps. You know, at a time where we're talking about housing affordability, do we want to increase any component at 44%? Do we want to increase this cost at 44%? I don't believe so. That's why I was so careful in my bill to do a minimal, and basically my bill, just so you know, because I am proposing a dock stamp increase that again goes toward housing. On a $500,000 house, it would be $125. On $1 million home, it was simply a $250 increase as opposed to the increase proposed here. So again, on a number of points, I would say this is if we're going to increase the cost of housing, it needs to go to housing. And do we really want to increase the cost to the seller of selling their house on the dock stamps by 44%? I think no. I think we need to vote this bill down. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dover. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Wayne, you're recognized to close on the motion to reconsider. And waves. Members, the question is the motion to reconsider. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
19 ayes, 1 nay to place House under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return and record your presence. All unexcused personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senators Armendariz, Halloran, and Hughes, please return to the chamber and record your presence. The House is under call. All unexcused members are present. Members, the vote was open. Senator Wayne, would you accept call-in votes? Mr. Clerk.
Senator Slama voting no. Senator Armendariz voting no. Senator Ballard voting no. Senator Decay voting yes. Senator Reapy voting no. Senator Halloran voting yes. Senator Wayne voting yes. Senator DeBoer voting no. Senator Vargas voting no. Senator Blood voting yes. Senator Albright voting yes. Senator Mosier voting no. Senator Dungan voting yes. Senator Hansen voting yes.
Record, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, 25 ayes, 12 nays on the motion to reconsider.
The motion is adopted. Senator Linehan, you're recognized to open on AM 3250. And I raise the call.
Okay, so I would just have, please vote for this, and then as Senator McDonald, Senator Clemens, Senator Wayne, Senator Dover, have a conversation between now and select and get something across the board. So I'd appreciate a green vote on the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Linehan. See no one else in the queue. You're recognized to close on the amendment and waive. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3250. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
24 ayes, 9 nays on the motion to adopt the committee amendments, Mr. President.
Committee amendment fails.
Mr. President, Senator McDonald would move to amend with AM 3399. Excuse me, Mr. President, apologies. There's a priority motion. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh moved to bracket the bill until April 18th.
Senator Cavanaugh, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, as I said my last time on the mic, I I don't support this bill. I don't support adding another bill into this bill. I think it's a nuanced argument to say that 50% is not the same as 100%. It's a 9-page amendment that is fairly substantive to add into this bill at this point. And it's just, a frustrating use of our time. But I want to get to all of the other good things that are on the docket today. So I'm not going to take too much time on this bill because I think we should be moving forward to get through this other business that you, my colleagues, have worked so hard on this year. But I will say that on select file, I will probably take more time on this, but I am not going to take this any more time today. Additionally, I am going to withdraw this bracket motion, and just a little lesson on the rules. If anyone in here doesn't want that, you can say objection and the bracket motion stays up there. So even though people file preventative bracket motions on their own bills or other people's bills, you still don't have control over it. People can still object to it being withdrawn. So with that, Mr. President, I withdraw my bracket motion.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Without objection, it is withdrawn.
Mr. President, Senator McDonald would move to amend with AM 3399.
Senator McDonald, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for everyone's input. So going back to the handout that Senator Clements gave everyone, and from the time we've begun discussion today, it's been about Amendment 3399. So if you look at the breakdown again, it is increasing the dock stamp by $1. It breaks it down to the 65 cents, as we've talked about, for the inheritance tax, and then it goes for the military support of 5 cents, IHUB 8 cents, grant services 5 cents, federal qualified health centers at 3 cents, and again, the film office has been eliminated. So committed to having further discussions based on the idea of the input today on select, definitely. Seeing where we can make sure that answering everyone's questions, not saying that we're all going to agree, but at least trying to improve the bill, get it moved forward. I'm asking please green vote on Amendment 3399 and LB 1363. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Senator Dover, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would encourage everyone to vote no on this. This bill needs to go away. We don't need, in any form, we don't need to increase the dock stamps. I've been in construction since 1988. We built our first house in 1988. It was a first for me, and we have built a lot of houses since 1988. And I want to tell you about housing affordability. Housing affordability is the death by 1,000 cuts. It isn't one large thing that drives up the cost of housing. It's 1,000 little things. In codes, we hear that, well, this isn't too much to put in the ground fault protectors, and it isn't that much to put them in the panel. It isn't much to put a backflow protector on. It isn't a lot to do a lot of these things. But I will say this: you can make an argument to increase the cost of housing if it's going to improve the house or perhaps save a life, right? Well, we are increasing the cost of a house not to help the people that live in the home, not to make housing more affordable. And so I would simply encourage everyone to vote this bill down. It needs to go away. The ideas need to come back. These ideas are good and sound ideas. The funding mechanism is inappropriate. If you want to keep housing affordable, this is one vote you can take for housing affordability. Please vote this bill down. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dover. Senator Clemens, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of AM 3399. In there, the inheritance tax will be reducing the rates on nieces and nephews from 11% to 8%, from non-relatives 15% down to 8%. That's about a 9.5% reduction in what the counties overall would receive. And the funding in the documentary tax increase gives them more than 9.5%. It more than covers the revenue loss. The problem we had when my inheritance tax bill did have documentary tax in it. It was 50 cents. This is 65 cents. The counties determined that they needed the revenue replacement needed to be the 65 cents. And I also changed the 5% to up to the 8% number, so that I have removed the county's objections, which is why my bill wasn't moving previously. And so I asked for your green vote on AM 3399. I've been assured that the counties are in support of this, and I'd like to get it to select, and we'll talk about other adjustments at that time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Clemens. Senator Brandt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Senator Clemens and staff. They've continued to work on the inheritance tax issue. They've worked with NACO. They started off at odds, and now I can see some real progress here. This is a very good amendment. The commissioners that have contacted me, I've had 3 or 4 in emails this morning, all have switched from opposed to they fully support this. They are willing to continue to work on this, and this is why I was opposed before, and now we are in support. This is good legislation. I understand Senator Dover's concerns, but quite often when you're buying a farm or a house for $300,000 or $3 million, that cost of those doc stamps are financed by the bank, and it's just part of the annual payment or the monthly payment on that house. Yes, it does raise that. In exchange, as Senator Clements explained, it decreases the effect of inheritance tax quite significantly. So both sides gave a little bit on a really good compromise here. I'd encourage everybody to vote green on 3399. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brandt. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator McDonald, you're recognized to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe everyone has hopefully a good understanding of where we were and where we are today, and to continue those discussions. But we've come a long way from when we stopped last week, and I appreciate everyone working on this floor and outside in the rotunda that's put the time in over the weekend and prior. So I'd ask for a green vote on Amendment 3399 and LB 1363, and we will continue our discussions and trying to improve the legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3399. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
24 ayes, 2 nays, place House under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. All senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senator Wishart, please return to the chamber and record your presence. The House is under call. All unexcused members are present. There's been a request for a roll call vote, regular order. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Aguilar. Voting yes. Senator Albright. Voting yes. Senator Arch. Voting yes. Senator Armendariz. Voting no. Senator Ballard. Voting no. Senator Blood. Not voting. Senator Boston. Voting yes. Senator Bostar. Voting yes. Senator Bostelman. Voting yes. Senator Brandt. Voting yes. Senator Brewer. Senator John Kavanaugh. Not voting. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting. Senator Clements. Voting yes. Senator Conrad. Voting no. Senator Day. Senator DeBoer. Not voting. Senator DeKay. Voting yes. Senator Dorn. Voting yes. Senator Dover. Voting no. Senator Dungan. Not voting. Senator Erdman. Voting yes. Senator Frederickson. Not voting. Senator Holleran. Voting yes. Senator Hansen. Voting yes. Senator Hardin. Voting yes. Senator Holcroft. Voting yes. Senator Hughes. Voting no. Senator Hunt. Senator Eibach. Voting no. Senator Jacobson. Not voting. Senator Kauth. Voting yes. Senator Linehan. Voting yes. Senator Lippincott. Voting yes. Senator Lowe. Senator McDonald. Voting yes. Senator McKinney. Not voting. Senator Meyer. Voting yes. Senator Mosier. Voting no. Senator Merman. Voting yes. Senator Raybold. Senator Reapy. Voting no. Senator Sanders. Voting yes. Senator Slama. Voting no. Senator Vargas. Voting no. Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes. Senator Walls. Not voting. Senator Wayne. Not voting. Senator Wishart. Not voting. Senator Jacobson voting yes. Senator Wayne voting yes. Vote is 25 ayes, 10 nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator. Or, excuse me, Mr. President, I have nothing further on the bill.
Members, the question. Senator McDonald, you're recognized to close. Senator McDonald waive closing. Members, the question is the advancement of LB 1363 to E&R initial. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
27 ayes, 10 nays, Mr. President, on advancement of the bill.
It is advanced. Mr. Clerk, I raise the call. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Legislative Bill 1363A, introduced by Senator McDonald, bill for enacting new appropriations, appropriates funds to aid in the carrying out of the provision. Legislative Bill 1363. Bill was read for the first time on March 26th of this year, placed directly on general file.
Yeah, Senator McDonald, you're recognized to open.
Again, based on negotiations and this being the A bill, definitely going to be changes, but pretty much it's only a placeholder moving forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Seeing no one else in the queue, you're recognized to close and waive closing. Members, the question is the advancement of LB 1363A to ENR initial. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
29 ayes, 8 nays on advancement of the bill, Mr. President.
It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, some items quickly. Amendments to be printed from Senator Von Gillern to LB 1023, Senator Merman 1331A. Additionally, committee reports from the Transportation Telecommunications Committee concerning gubernatorial appointments to the Board of Public Roads Classifications and Standards. Reference report from the referencing committee, referencing LR 408. New LR 470, that'll be laid over. Additionally, your committee on judiciary chaired by Senator Wayne reports legislative resolution 279CA to general file with amendments. And explanation of vote from Senator Hughes. Mr. President, as it concerns the agenda, select file, consent calendar, Legislative Bill 1085. First of all, there are E&R amendments, Senator.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the E&R amendments to LB 1085 be adopted.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. They are adopted.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1085 be advanced to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, select file Legislative Bill 903. I have nothing on the bill, Senator.
Senator Ballard, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 903 be advanced to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, select file Legislative Bill 1326. I have no E&R amendments. Senator Linehan would move to amend with FA 404.
Senator Linehan, you're recognized to open on your floor amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have filed several amendments. I've got several more to file tomorrow on bills that are coming up tomorrow. I am trying to work to figure out a compromise on the scholarship program. And I don't want to slow us down. I don't want to be here till midnight, but I would like people who have changed their mind or different from what I was told earlier, if they would please come talk to me. So thank you, Mr. President, and I'll pull the amendment.
So ordered. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Linehan, I also have FA 405, 406, 407, and 408. Withdraw all of those as well as my understanding.
So ordered.
In that case, Senator, I have nothing further on the bill.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1326 be advanced to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, next bill, Legislative Bill 1214. I have nothing on the bill, Senator.
Senator Ballard, recognized for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1214 be advanced to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, select file Legislative Bill 1070. I have nothing on the bill, Senator.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1070 be advanced to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, select file Legislative Bill 910. I have E&R amendments, first of all, Senator.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the E&R amendments to LB 910 be adopted.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. It is adopted.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move LB 910 be advanced to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, select file Legislative Bill 1029. I have nothing on the bill, Senator.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1029 be advanced to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Legislative Bill 840. First of all, I have I have E&R amendments, Mr. President.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the E&R amendments to LB 840 be adopted.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. They are adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Von Gillern would move to bracket the bill until April 18th.
Senator Von Gillern, you're recognized to open on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a note into the clerk, and actually I just talked to Carol. We've got 4 motions on this bill and we're pulling them all. Thank you.
Without objection, they are withdrawn. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator McDonald, I have AM 3208 with a note that you would withdraw.
Without objection, it is withdrawn.
In that case, Mr. President, Senator McKinney would move to amend with AM 3351.
Senator McKinney, you're recognized to open on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just for refreshers, LBA 40 is a committee package from the Urban Affairs Committee. And what it deals with is poverty elimination action plans for cities of the metropolitan class. The following key components of the plan includes a needs assessment, community engagement, affordable housing, and healthcare access. This plan should be reevaluated every 2 years and updated every 5 years. The act is only applicable to cities of the metropolitan class and cities of the primary class. In my experience, I believe cities can make impactful actions to combat poverty. Excuses abound. The transparency and the effectiveness of implemented initiatives is often lacking, and there's clear room for improvement. While the Poverty Elimination Action Plan, it won't solve every issue. It stands as a crucial starting point, ensuring accountability and providing insights for areas of enhancement. LB 840 was brought out of the committee on a 7-0 vote. Then there's also it includes LBAA1. It comes out from Senator Ballard. It amends the Middle Income Workforce Investment Act, and some LBAA1 would allow cities outside of Lincoln, Lancaster County, and cities outside of Omaha and Sarpy County to receive workforce housing grants through the Middle Income Workforce Housing Act. LBAA1 was amended into LBA 40 on a 6-0-1 vote out of committee. Also included in the bill is LB 1046, which comes from Senator John Kavanaugh, which will require under the Nebraska Housing Act, Agency Act, in the city of a metropolitan class, an appointment of counsel for a resident in termination hearings or eviction proceedings. Under this amendment, this will go into effect in July 1, 2025. The cost of any court-appointed counsel shall be paid by the House attorney. And LB 1046 was amended into LBA 40 on a 7-0 vote coming out of committee. It also includes LB 530, which changes provisions of the Nebraska Housing Agency Act. So AM 3351 is an amendment after we've had discussions with the Omaha Housing Authority and other housing agencies to try to address some concerns from general to select. And I believe we did as best as possible, but to keep with the spirit of the actual intent of the bills. So Omaha Housing Authority had concerns that a resident commissioner appointed under this bill might need to leave the board if OHA changes the number of units or otherwise does not meet eligibility requirements in their respective districts before the term is up. AM 3351 changes on page 7. 4B Part 2 allows flexibility in this case for resident commissioners to finish their term. They were also concerned that they would not be able to have a monthly board meeting at each of the public housing complexes and suggested quarterly meetings. AM 3351 made a change on page 8, lines 18 through 21, changes monthly meetings to quarterly. They were concerned that they would have to print too much paper for board meetings, notices, and agendas, and that they were planning to purchase TV monitors for announcements in common areas. AM 3351 makes some changes on page 8, lines 11 through 13, allows for posting board meeting notices and agendas on TV screens. They were concerned that the grievance procedure provisions would not allow flexibility in the case of the federal statute changing. AM 3351 makes some changes on page 10, lines 21 through 26. It allows flexibility and requires grievance procedure to be posted in plain language on website and in the lease. They were concerned that the complaint process was too long and complicated, and that in the existing work order process via tenant portal was sufficient. AM 3351 makes some changes. We have reduced the requirements of the complaint process for OHA, but we retain its spirit because a complaint is not and should not be simply limited to a maintenance request. It removes independent panel of complaints. It removes hearing portion of complaint process. It removes the toll-free hotline requirement and allows residents to make a complaint by telephone, in person, or online. They were concerned that LB 840 removed a commissioner who worked for the city. AM 3351 changes this portion and removed that section entirely. So then we move on to NARO. They had some current concerns that two portions of LB 840 could apply to all housing agencies in Nebraska. AM 3351 makes some changes. It specifies that any housing agency, any changes to the Housing Agency Act included in LB 840 only applies to housing agencies in the city of the metropolitan class. Look at page 8, line 4, page 8, lines 9 through 10. They were concerned that LB 840 struck a section applying to a certain amount of ownership shares in a corporation being exempt from a conflict of interest. Taking this out could complicate rural housing agencies' ability to do business with certain entities relating to construction. AM 3351 changes this and it put the language back in. You can look at page 15, lines 1 through 3. There were some changes that were requested but not included. One was the removal of the right to counsel, and the reason for this, it was never negotiable. Contrary to OHA's assertion, all of the residents do not have legal counsel in eviction proceedings. Residents have and continue to be violated, resulting in increased costs to political subdivisions through the increases in homelessness and housing instability relating to housing authority evictions. Also, they wanted us to strike the complaint process entirely, as OHA argues most of this is already covered by their work order process via the resident portal. The reason for not doing this is serious maintenance problems have and continue to exist in OHA, as you can see by the document that was handed around, and you can see from all the news articles impacting the health, safety, and well-being of the city's most vulnerable residents. Not all complaints are also not related to maintenance and would not be addressed via the resident portal system. Also, increased accountability and transparency of a government-funded agency is important for residents and for taxpayers. It's also important to be clear, there's going to be another amendment from Senator Jacobson. It is an unfriendly amendment. We've tried as best as possible to address the concerns of the housing agencies. They came in at the last minute after especially not showing up for Senator Kavanaugh's hearing on his portion of this amendment. They did not show up for or against the bill. did no opposition, came in at the last minute, hired a lobbyist just to fight this bill at the last minute. Then after they're asking us, hey, could you make some changes to the bill? We're like, yeah, we will, but it's some things we're not moving on, but yes, we will make some changes. We get here and we get an email. I should look at my email, but I think it was after 9. Hey guys, we're gonna introduce an amendment to strike every section that applies to us. How is that acting in good faith? And that's the problem residents have been dealing with for years now with the Omaha Housing Authority. They are not good actors. They don't act in good faith. And this only applies to the city of the metropolitan class. And we're just trying to hold them accountable because it's obvious and it is clear that without accountability, this agency will not do the right thing for residents in Omaha. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Jacobson would move to amend the amendment with AM 3396.
Senator Jacobson, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, as Senator McKinney said, the amendment I'm bringing basically would remove OHA from those standards that were brought. And let me just add a little bit of light on why I have concerns about this. I understand the other housing authorities throughout Nebraska are not subject to this, and so you're asking why am I opposed and why am I helping Omaha? And the answer is because I just fundamentally have problems with what's being put forward. Okay, first of all, let's understand that the housing authorities, their residents pay rent based upon their income. And they do have a number of residents that have virtually zero income. Okay, so the federal government is subsidizing that. They're under standards to where if they fail to evict when they're not paying the rent, the minimum rent they're required to pay, they lose that federal subsidy, which causes the cost for them to operate this facility to go up and impacts every other resident when it comes to trying to maintain those facilities. The housing authorities are the epitome of affordable housing. It doesn't get more affordable than that. You're paying a percentage of your income, whatever that may be, for rent. But in this bill, you would be required as a housing authority to pay for an attorney for someone being evicted to sue you as the authority to stop you from evicting them. Let me repeat that. You would be required to pay for an attorney to sue you or fight the eviction. There are pro bono attorneys out there today. There are plenty of attorneys out there helping these individuals today if they have a grievance. This is a plaintiff's attorney bill. That's what this piece is. This is out there to, it's job creation for plaintiff's attorneys to be able to come in and be paid by somebody who they perceive to have deep pockets to delay the eviction process when all you have to do to avoid eviction is pay your rent based upon what your income is. At a very, very low rate, you're not going to find a better deal than the housing authority. That's as good a deal as you're going to find anywhere. I don't have any issues with the bill itself. I could support 840 as long as my amendment gets attached. If it doesn't, I'm a hard no on 840. I'm just trying to figure out a path forward that makes sense here, but the eviction piece does not make sense. I think we're talking about conflicts of interest, which is going to mean you're going to have people who have expertise who can't be involved in the process, which I think is hurtful to being able to provide a good operation. So at the end of the day, this is about making this more of a common sense kind of a bill and being able to make sure that the housing authorities can continue to operate and provide a place for people who are most vulnerable, a place for them to live. That's what this amendment does. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator McKinney, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I oppose AM 3396. It is an unfriendly amendment, as I stated before. And if Senator Jacobson truly didn't believe only that residents of public housing authorities who have lived and are living in substandard conditions because the public housing agency doesn't do the right thing, don't deserve a right to counsel, he would have only struck that out. But that's not what they did. It strikes out the other language of the bill that would provide more accountability and transparency. It takes out the updated language for grievance processes for the residents and complaint processes and those type of things. See, he didn't just take out, I don't think, residents of public housing agencies shouldn't have legal counsel. He's taken out the other provisions of the bill that provides residents with, I would say, more power to voice their complaints and concerns to the housing agency. It also would provide two more additional resident commissioners because there needs to be more representation of the residents on the board. So if it was just about legal counsel, or he would have brought another amendment, but that's not what he did. They got him to introduce this amendment because the Omaha Housing Authority doesn't want accountability. They refuse to be transparent. They don't want to do right by their residents. The whole time that we've been negotiating about this bill, I have yet to have a conversation with them that they even mentioned we care about the residents. It's been about us. Them feeling like this bill and these bills are personal attacks to people that work for the authority. No, this bill is about people. Look, I just don't understand it. Read the articles. It says Omaha public housing residents are facing evictions more often and sometimes over small debts. You stand up and say some of these people have zero rents and these type of things, but then you're also leaving out the conversation that the housing agency has evicted people for a lost key of just $30. Is that right? You're leaving out the conversation that they stopped evicting people in November because they failed to tell people or notify people that they had a right to a grievance process. You failed to leave that out, Senator Jacobson. Your amendment is unfriendly and it's disingenuous. You come here at the last hour to try to stop this bill, and it's unfriendly. It only deals with a housing agency in the city of Omaha. It doesn't deal with North Platte at all. Because if you stood up and told me, Senator McKinney, I need this for North Platte, I would support you. It's sad. We wake up and try to do things to better the lives of our constituents, and we get these unfriendly and unfriendly amendments, and we get agencies acting in good faith. NARO and the Omaha Housing Agency, in my opinion, have acted in good faith, and everybody involved with them has.
1 minute.
We've done nothing but listen to their concerns, even though they came in at the last minute, literally the last minute. But we was like, all right, we'll be open to making some changes. We're cool with that. But this is not it. This is not going to be it. And I ask you all to vote red on AM 3396. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator Linehan, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would Senator Wayne yield to a question?
Senator Wayne, would you yield?
Yes.
Senator Wayne, if I remember, the article that Senator McKinney is referring to was the fact that the Omaha Housing Authority was evicting people that owed as little as $50.
Correct.
Could you expand on exactly what's going on there and why it is so problematic?
It's problematic because you're oftentimes dealing with a population that, one, is nervous of attorneys and the system. So when they go there, they really don't know their complete rights and what's going on. And judges are not allowed to give legal advice. So the only way to deal with this issue is to let them have counsel and let them deal with it. So it's easy to get up and say, this is a plaintiff's bill. This is an attorney's bill to make money. Nobody's making money on these cases. Let me be clear there. Nobody is getting involved in landlord-tenant stuff to make money. It's truly about defending the rights of people. And so if we start going down that path, then we should talk about how much money banks make off of this and how this is a banking bill, a banking amendment, because here's the trade-off that these individual landowners get. People who are in the voucher system as far as public housing, they get a trade-off of having a guaranteed check every month, so they don't have to go out and try to do all these extra things. Part of that guaranteed check comes from the federal government. When you accept federal dollars like that, there should be more requirements by the nature of accepting federal dollars. If you think about it, when you accept state tax credits, you have to meet certain requirements. We are adding to those requirements. And one of those requirements is to make sure that they can get advised on counsel. Half of the people in here have not read the Landlord-Tenant Act. Those are actually due process rights established in the Landlord-Tenant Act. So if the state is going to say, you have a right underneath the Landlord-Tenant Act, if you have these rights under federal law, but particularly the state-owned Landlord-Tenant Act, then the state should provide at least some counsel to make sure that you understand your rights. Again, we cannot allow judges to do that because judges cannot give legal advice. They are supposed to be neutral arbitrators. So that's why we're doing it. And what's perplexed to me about this is really an Omaha issue. And so I talked to Senator Bostelman and a couple other people about this bill, and we went through it line by line and section by section, and it's talking about an Omaha issue. An Omaha issue. You could be maybe against some things in principle for whatever reason across the state, but if you have a community who is asking for help, why wouldn't we offer that when we can? And that's what we're doing here. We're providing an opportunity for those who need help, who can at least understand their rights. And you know what many of these attorneys are going to do? If they come in and say, look, underneath the Landlord-Tenant Act, you have no options here. So we're going to go in front of the judge. We're going to see if we can get a 30-day continuance so you can move out or do whatever you got to do, but you have no options. That's all they're trying to do is figure out what the options could or could not be. Now, on the other side, you better believe if you're dealing with the federal government, getting vouchers or your OHA or you're somebody like that, you already have an attorney. You already are providing that because it's built into your costs and it's built into, so it's not going to cost you any more. What is going to cost you more is the fact that we didn't fix Senator Duncan's bill about jury trials. That was going to cost everybody more. We didn't fix the jury trial issue. This doesn't cost any landowner who is working with the federal government underneath Section 8 housing, doesn't cost them anything else. If you ever been to eviction court, their attorney is there all day, or not all day, but all morning and that morning, because that's what they do. They're hired to handle this stuff. They typically have a flat fee and it's built into their cost. So to say this is going to increase or somehow this is a plaintiff work, to me, is flat out absurd. It's just not. Like, I'm not taking this. Think about it. I'm gonna charge somebody who can't pay rent to pay me. Clearly, they already breached that contract because they couldn't pay the rent. So me as an attorney is gonna say, you're gonna sign a contingency or you're gonna pay me hourly when you can't afford your rent. No, these attorneys are doing it for the bare minimum just to make sure people are getting their rights advisory and know what to do. That's all it is. And this is a standard we impose underneath the Landlord-Tenant Act. We say these are your rules. We say these are the things that you should know. So why not provide those opportunities to make sure they at least understand what we have to put on them as far as due process? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator John Kavanaugh, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I rise in opposition to AM 3396 and in support of 3351 and LB 840. I just want to clear up a few things because there seems to be some confusion about this. So first off, this bill, AM 3351 and LB 840, only applies to tenants living in OHA-owned buildings. So it doesn't apply to voucher housing, doesn't apply to any privately held property. This only applies as it pertains to where the government is the landlord. So this amendment is designed to take away protections of citizens when the government is trying to kick them out of their housing. And the things that I think Senator Jacobson misunderstands about this are people can be evicted for other reasons besides inability to pay. And the folks who have volunteer lawyers, they get those lawyers about 15 minutes before court, which means you get about half hour of that lawyer's time. Court appointment fees cost is $65 an hour in Douglas County, which is where this takes place. Senator Jacobson, OHA says that for them to provide these court-appointed lawyers for the defendants, not plaintiffs, defendants, would take 8 hours of work. They're saying that the rights of their tenants are so complicated that it takes 8 hours of a lawyer to represent them, and you're calling it good at 15 minutes. The reason that this is different than other situations is that we're talking about the government against citizens, which is why the government should provide lawyers. But we're talking about public housing, which has a different set of rights, which is more complicated than regular landlord-tenant law. And it does need lawyers who have a little bit more expertise. That is the reason for this bill. And under the current situation, as Senator McKinney handed out these letters, or these articles, and we've talked about previously on the mic, OHA is currently violating their tenants' rights. So without a lawyer in an adversarial system, we are creating a problem where OHA is breaking the law, violating people's rights, and it is going to cost more money in the long run. So this is designed to save money. But to go back to how much lawyers are, I would ask them, Senator Jacobson, what is OHA paying for the lawyers to evict people? What is OHA paying for the lobbyists they hired to fight this bill at the 11th hour? How much is OHA collecting in court fees against their clients? And I would ask them if they can use their fees, because they're going to say they don't have any available funds for this, if they can use those court fees for that, if they can use the money they're using to hire the lobbyist for representation of their tenants. And I would ask if they've sought outside funding. They're going to say they don't have any money for this. Have they looked into getting any foundation aid or any private support for this? Because there's a lot of folks who would be interested in supporting this. And I would tell you there are folks who have talked to them, myself included, in the interest of trying to help them find that aid. But fundamentally, this bill is limited in scope because the problem is limited, authority specifically. That's why this bill was brought. That's why my bill was brought, why Senator McKinney's bill was brought. And then, as Senator McKinney correctly pointed out, they reached out to us on, I think it was March 15th, when the bill was on the agenda, and we sat down with them that was on a Thursday, Thursday or Friday. We sat down with them the following Tuesday and talked through all their concerns. And then we received an email sometime later and addressed the concerns in that. And yes, we didn't take out the fundamental crux of these bills, which is that it does require them to be held accountable. That's what these bills are. It's a government accountability bill. If you are in favor of government accountability when it's acting against citizens, then you should be for this bill and against AM 3396. But if you want to let the government run roughshod over our poorest citizens, then you can support AM 3396. But there's definitely some confusion about what this bill does. So if you have any questions, please ask us, but I ask your red vote on AM 3396. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Dover, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you. I rise in support of AM 3396, Senator Jacobson's bill. And I understand that Senator McKinney thinks this is an unfriendly amendment. I would question that and wonder if it isn't a friendly amendment because it's going to help his bill, the rest of the bill, pass. the Omaha Housing Authority obviously opposes this bill, and some of their concerns are the requirement to pay for a tenant's counsel during an eviction. They believe it's a bad precedent to set in Nebraska. OHA has provided an outside legal counsel opinion confirming that there is no source of funding available to OHA to pay for the tenant legal fees. Again, an outside legal counsel opinion. Even if such a source existed, it would take needed dollars away from the efforts to make more affordable housing available. Another concern, the topic is the requirement to provide duplicative complaint process. OHA already follows specific HUD regulations regarding tenant grievances. The overly prescriptive requirements to establish a complaint process would partially duplicate current efforts in some cases. In other cases, would require significant additional costs and staff time. Such costs would reduce the funds available to provide more affordable housing. Another topic they have is overbroad conflict of interest provision. The conflict of interest provisions would hold OHA to a higher standard than other entities in the entire state, including the state itself. HUD conflict of interest regulations already require OHA to disclose and HUD to review and approve or deny any such potential conflicts. I work with the Housing Authority in Norfolk, and I'll tell you one thing. My experience with housing authorities, and I know other housing authority people across the state as we've had meetings, we have a property management company. I've worked with HUD in Oddfellow Manor. I understand HUD's requirements are quite burdensome, and I would say that a housing authority would be the last group that would not take care of its tenants. I'm asked to, because HUD sets the requirements for that. And Senator Kavanaugh says this applies to OHA, and so why are we concerned about it in Norfolk? We're concerned about it because I wonder who's next. When they start doing this here, is Senator Duncan's bill going to be, again, come back next year and then help with funding of attorneys for evictions? And I would like to address another thing. Someone says that someone's evicted over $50 or lost key or something like that. Trust me, I've been in property management for, well, probably 30 some years now. And that eviction of a key or $50 is not that simple. They have situations where there may be a tenant who has physically threatened a tenant next door, loud music, disturbs the peace of other people living there. Maybe there's drugs involved and other things. And there are other things they can do. But sometimes, be quite truthful, this is the easiest way to take care of it, and it satisfies the law. So I'd say don't take face value if someone just doesn't get kicked out because they're $50 behind and they lost a key. That doesn't happen, because trust me, if OHA is worried about the cost, it costs a lot more to clean the carpets, advertise, and get someone else in there. And I'm quite confused, to tell you the truth. So explain to me. So we're going to fund, the government funds OHA, right? So we're funding the government, more to say, right? Or we're funding more additional government regulation, those kind of things. And now we're asked to fund someone to oppose what we're funding. So I don't get it. Why are we're funding OHA to help people in affordable housing and find places to rent, and we're funding to subsidize rent. Now we want to fund someone to oppose the people we're funding. It makes no sense to me. So I would encourage you to vote yes on Senator Jacobson's amendment, and I don't see any problems with the rest of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dover. Senator Wayne, you're recognized to speak.
What are we doing? Thank you, Mr. President. What are we doing, guys? We're worried about a slippery slope argument. But that slippery slope wasn't there, Senator Dover, when your community got $10 million of ARPA fund for a park. I didn't hear nobody get up and say, if we do Norfolk ARPA money for a park, then we're going to start funding parks everywhere. I didn't hear that. We are talking about an issue that has been multiple front page news in the Omaha area. This bill in the area we're striking deals with Omaha. And to get up and say they're going to have to pay more when they just dropped $15,000 to hire a lobbyist. That's public funds to hire a lobbyist to come down here and lobby is insane. Then we get on the mic and say nobody would be evicted for $50. First of all, you can't say that because you weren't there.
This is an individual who is trying to solve a problem for his community. OHA limited to the city of Omaha. And we're fighting it. This amendment didn't come from an Omaha senator. Guess why? Because every Omaha senator is like, it's a problem. There's a problem in Omaha when it comes to OHA. But we're going to have rural senators tell us how to fix our community. We're going down that path again. If he would have just struck the part about due process for council, I don't know where McKinney's is on that. Believe it or not, I haven't read all these bills that McKinney introduced. We don't talk about every bill that we both introduce every day. But maybe that would make sense. But to strike the provision about conflicts, if it's good enough for an inland port, Senator Jacobson, it's good enough for OHA. Inland port, you can't have a conflict. You can't have an interest in the contract, nor can you even own property inside of an inland port and be on the board. It's okay for inland ports, it's okay for OHA. And why? Because amazingly, people on the board, somehow their firms and their businesses get the contracts. So we're trying to add more transparency and accountability. I'm not even saying we, I'm just supporting the bill. Senator McKinney is. Because this is a huge issue in his district. You guys aren't reading and seeing every night where there's bed bug infestation in entire OHA properties. You're not reading about that in North Platte or North Fork. He's met with OHA board members multiple times and staff. They worked out some things. Now they're opposed to conflicts. Every day it's something new for an individual who is trying to help his community. Public housing. Sometimes I wonder what we're really trying to do. Are we just protecting big government the entire time? This is another provision to protect big government, but you guys claim to be conservatives. Because big government may have to work a little harder. Not just big government, big federal government may have to work just a little harder to evict the person making less than $24,000 a year. You know what little harder means? They get to review their rights. And as an attorney, if they don't have any options, they don't have any options. But the big federal government gets to hire an attorney to come into these proceedings and just push these little individuals out the way. They're not living in Section 8 housing because they have a lot of money. These are oftentimes our most vulnerable people. And we can't make sure that they're accountable. We can't make sure that they're transparent. We can't make sure they don't have conflicts. That the same law firm has been the same law firm since I was in law school, and it just so happens they always have somebody on the board. What are we doing? Maybe when ag people come up to me and say, we got to solve property tax problem in ag land, I'm gonna say, no, I'm not helping your community anymore.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator Bozen would like to announce some guests in North Balcony. Fourth graders from St. Michael Catholic School in Lincoln. Please stand and be recognized by your Nebraska Legislature. Senator Jacobson, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, first of all, let's go back to some of the things that have been said kind of here in the meantime. First of all, why am I concerned about this? Because it's a slippery slope. What starts in Omaha and Lincoln tends to find its way out state. So I'm not a novice to this. I understand how things happen. If it starts working somewhere, then okay, why don't we just do it for everybody? So that's why I'm concerned about some of the bad pieces of this to begin with. The most egregious piece is requiring OHA to pay attorneys. We all know how this works. Why would anybody not hire an attorney at OHA's expense in every case if they don't have to pay a dime and OHA has to pay it? Why would you not do that? And what does that add to the cost? OHA, the dollars that come into OHA are used to take care of building these units, maintaining these units. So we talk about substandard conditions. Well, they're going to become more substandard if that's the case, because the money they have to work with is from the rents that they receive. We've heard about people being evicted for owing $50. The average rent is somewhere just under $600 a month. The federal government subsidizes the difference between what the tenant pays and what the rent is. That's set by the federal government. So at $50, they're giving up $550 a month because the federal government's not going to pay it if they allow a tenant to stay who's not paying the $50. Also, there's a discrimination clause. If somebody's paying full $600 and somebody else is paying $50, they have to treat them the same when it comes to eviction. That's the way it works. There's a process to eviction. That's why you got people paying that are supposed to be paying $50 that are being evicted, because they're required to. There are federal guidelines that are already in place. Many of the parts of this section are duplicative to the federal guidelines. We're trying to provide affordable housing throughout the state through these housing authorities. It's the cheapest deal in town. It's the best deal going. Are there going to be problems from time to time? Sure there are. Senator Wayne's indicated, well, why do we have this different standard than what we have for inland ports in terms of conflicts? We shouldn't. We shouldn't have that standard for inland ports. As you move out state in particular, we started the inland port in North Platte. They went down through a list of people that they thought would be great on the board. And about 80% of them had a conflict one way or the other. I couldn't be on it, or anyone from my bank could be on it, because we might do some banking business with them, so that would be a conflict. There are people that live in the area, but if they own land there, that would be a conflict. If there's somebody that wants to put a business in there, that would be a conflict. They can't be on the board. So where do you get the expertise to serve on those particular boards if you conflict everybody out who has as an interest in it or who would have the expertise to do it? Now, we were able to find a very good board, but they had to dig pretty deep to get there, because the number of people that would have normally been right there to be able to be on that board, who brought a lot of experience in development and other activities to help make it happen, are all conflicted out. So I'm just telling you that I'm ready to vote on the bill. I think it's time to move forward, vote on the amendment, vote the thing through. We've spent enough time on it. Let's just move it forward.
1 minute.
And so I would encourage you to just, let's get out of the queue. Let's go ahead and run the votes, see where it needs to go, and move on from there. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jacobson. Senator Lowe, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And Senator Jacobson, I was about ready to get out of the queue, but I decided I was already on my way up. We've heard that they'll evict you for something like $60. Well, if you're paying $5 a month in rent and you haven't paid for 3 years, or you haven't paid for a year, being a landlord, I have a problem with that. I know these people aren't making a lot of money, and that's why they pay like $5 a month, or $10 a month, or $15 a month. How many of these pages would like to pay $15 a month for their apartments that they live in? And any single one of them could have bed bugs brought in by another tenant in the same apartment complex. Bed bugs are very mobile. They don't like to stay in one place. I stay in a hotel when I come down here, and every time I come down, I do not put my luggage on the bed or on the floor. I keep it above the floor and on the luggage rack or on the table. Bed bugs are very mobile. And if we're going to start paying for attorneys for everything that comes up, the housing authority won't have any money to take care of things like the bed bugs. They won't have any money to improve on the property. That's the problem when we start dealing with landlords and making rules for landlords to obey. The rent goes up. Wait, it can't in this instant. It has to stay down because of the federal government. And it has to stay down because that's all that they can pay. So as we look at this, I stand in favor of AM 3396, but I'm against the whole bill. I voted it out of committee. I thought Senator McKinney needed a chance to speak on it, and he's very passionate about it. But I am against LB 840. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, Senator Lowe. Senator McKinney, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I ask that everyone oppose this unfriendly amendment, AM 3396. It is a last hour amendment. It's unfriendly. What's also interesting, really interesting about OHA. So over the past 2 years, let's talk about Senator Kavanaugh's portion of this. They did not show up in opposition. They did not submit a letter. They didn't. So I just want to be clear, in the future, if y'all support this amendment, if somebody comes at the last minute to try to kill your bill and you tell me, Senator McKinney, they didn't even oppose the bill at the hearing, can you please help me stop this? I'm going to look at you with a side eye. They didn't even come to the hearing. Then on my portion of this bill 530, technically they came to the hearing, but the people that testified that were on the bill testified in their personal capacity. But technically speaking, if I'm going to be technical, OHA never testified on none of these bills, even for or against. So if they have this much opposition against these bills, why aren't they sitting in testifiers' chairs saying, we oppose these bills? So in the future, Senator Jacobson, if somebody comes to me the day of your bill with an amendment and I put it on and you tell me it's unfriendly and they coming at the last minute and they didn't show up to the hearing, I probably won't listen to you because that's what you're doing. What is this? We're just trying to take care of people in our community. That is all we're doing. This doesn't stop them from evicting people at all. A person still can be evicted. This is no slippery slope. These are people in the most vulnerable situations. Then you talk about the bed bug issue, like OHA has cut staff, especially pest control staff, and they haven't hired like they supposed to. That's why the bed bug situation is out of control. They need to tell the truth. It's just, and then we want to demonize tenants and say they might have did this, or it's more to the story, it's more context. So you're saying that a person that is paying $50 a month gets evicted, they don't deserve some type of representation? My grandfather lived in the OHA tower before. He didn't have a lot of money. And when he died, he lived in the OHA tower. Well, he had just lived in the OHA tower, but he wasn't mobile. He didn't have money. He couldn't afford an attorney if he was to get evicted. He didn't even know the landlord-tenant laws. A lot of these people are seniors. Some don't even have family. They need some type of representation and help in these situations. Then we talk about locking homeless people up if they're sleeping outside. This is not going to help. It's just interesting. And then we don't want conflicts of interest. So we want people to sit on boards and make money from contracts while they sit on the board. That is what we're talking about. So
1 minute.
Sit on a board, you work for a company, You get your company a contract and you make money. That's cool, I guess. That's what they want. That's what they're arguing for. But they're not arguing for the people because they don't care about the people. They never cared about the people, because if they cared about the people, we wouldn't have all these stories in the news. And that's the problem, and that's why you need to vote against Senator Jacobson's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise in opposition to AM 3396 in support of AM 3351 and LB 840. I am a bit confused as I've been listening to the debate here, hearing from two senators that are from very far away from Omaha talk about that the city of Omaha, Senator Jacobson, the city of Omaha does not have enough people within it that we can't find 7 who don't have a conflict with OHA. That doesn't make any sense. And looking at the board of OHA, it makes even less sense. There is no reason whatsoever that it should be hard for the city of Omaha to find 7 individuals in the entire city that aren't conflicted out. OHA is a moneymaker for developers getting contracts. Government should be transparent. Not enacting this bill, adding this amendment just means that we are okay with sleazy backdoor deals happening. We are okay with the rich getting richer and contracts not being a fair bid. And we are okay with saying that poor people who live in housing that is meant for them, built for them, shouldn't have access to resources to combat an eviction that it's complicated because of both federal and state regulations. And we are okay with a public board appointed by the mayor hiring a contract lobbyist. That is egregious. And colleagues, if you're willing to go listen to a paid lobbyist who was hired at the last hour for a public board because they don't want to be conflicted out, this is the essence of bad government, sleazy government, backdoor deals. Let's do right by people living in poverty. And let's let the people who represent these people, myself included, enact policies that cost the state nothing and make it safer for children and families to live in our communities. I have a significant amount of public housing in my district, in my neighborhood. I am friends with residents. My kids go to school with residents, and they are just like everybody else. They love Taylor Swift to a very extreme degree, as do I. I'm a Swiftie. They like Halloween costumes. They want to go trick-or-treating in a safe neighborhood. They are cleanly. They don't have bed bugs everywhere. Yes, there are bed bugs, but they're not everywhere. And anyone, to Senator Lowe's point, can have bed bugs. You can go to a 5-star hotel and have bed bugs. That is not a reason to demonize people living in poverty. My children go and play at the houses of people who live in public housing because it is safe, it is clean, it is secure, and it is a family home. And these people deserve the resources afforded to them. And we deserve to be able to give that to them. And we should not be going to cronyism and talking to paid lobbyists so that a board member doesn't get kicked off because he's making money off of being a board member. That's disgusting. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cavanaugh. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Jacobson, you're recognized to close and waive closing. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3396. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
25 ayes, 1 nay to place the House under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senators Vargas, Bostar, Erdman, Hansen, and Arch, please return to the chamber and record your presence. The House is under call. All unauthorized members are present. Members the question is the adoption of AM 3396. There's been a request for a roll call vote. Regular order. Mr. Clerk.
Senator Aguilar. Voting no. Senator Albright. Voting yes. Senator Arch. Not voting. Senator Armendariz. Voting no. Senator Ballard. Voting yes. Senator Blood. Voting no. Senator Boston. Senator Bostar. Not voting. Senator Bostelman. Not voting. Senator Brandt. Voting no. Senator Brewer. Senator John Kavanaugh. Voting no. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh. Not voting. Senator Clements. Voting yes. Senator Conrad. Voting no. Senator Day. Voting no. Senator DeBoer. Voting no. Senator DeKay. Voting yes. Senator Dorn. Voting yes. Senator Dover. Voting yes. Senator Dungan. Voting no. Senator Erdman. Not voting. Senator Frederickson. Voting no. Senator Holleran. Not voting. Senator Hansen. Not voting. Senator Hardin. Voting yes. Senator Holcroft. Voting yes. Senator Hughes. Not voting. Senator Hunt. Senator Ibaugh. Voting yes. Senator Ibaugh voting yes. Senator Jacobson. Voting yes. Senator Kauth. Voting yes. Senator Linehan. Not voting. Senator Lippincott. Voting yes. Senator Lowe. Voting yes. Senator McDonald. Voting no. Senator McKinney. Voting no. Senator Meyer. Voting yes. Senator Mosier. Voting yes. Senator Merman. Not voting. Senator Raybold. Senator Reapy. Senator Sanders. Voting yes. Senator Slama. Voting yes. Senator Vargas. Voting no. Senator Von Gillern. Voting yes. Senator Walls. Voting no. Senator Wayne. Voting no. Senator Wishart. Voting no. Vote is Senator Erdman voting yes. The vote is 19 ayes, 16 nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is not adopted. Mr. Clerk.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator.
See no one else in the queue. Senator McKinney, you're recognized to close on AM 3351.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, colleagues, the purpose and the mission of LBA 40 and AM 3351 is number one, to enact a poverty elimination action plan. Two, hold Omaha Housing Authority accountable. Give the residents a better voice to file complaints, address grievances, more voices on the board, those type of things. Because the Omaha Housing Authority has not been a good actor. They haven't showed up even down here against these bills. They've had people come down here, but officially on the record, if you look at the record, OHA has not testified in opposition. They're coming at the last minute, hired a lobbyist at the last minute. We've been talking to them back and forth for like almost a month now, going through amendment language. And then at the last hour, we get here this morning and they get Senator Jacobson to introduce an amendment to strike every section that addresses them because they don't want accountability and transparency. Also included in this is changes to the middle income workforce housing program. So there will be an increase from the cap from 5 million to 10 million to allow for entities to access more funds to do more affordable housing. Senator Ballard's bill, which expands access to the middle income workforce housing outside of just Omaha and Lincoln to areas in Sarpy and areas like Waverly. So let's be clear about what's in this package and why we need your support. And with that, I ask for your green vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3351. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
29 ayes, 10 nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is adopted.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator.
Senator McKinney, you're recognized to close on LB 840.
No.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 840 be advanced to ENR for engrossing.
Request for a machine vote. Members, the question is the advancement of LB 840 to ENR engrossing. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Have you all voted who care to vote? Record, Mr. Clerk.
25 ayes, 13 nays on advancement of the bill, Mr. President.
It is advanced. Mr. Clerk, I raise the call.
Mr. President, next bill, Legislative Bill 1329. First of all, Senator, I have ENR amendments.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the ENR amendments to LB 1329 be adopted.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. ENR amendments are adopted.
Mr. President, I have Senator Kavanaugh MO 1208, 1207, both with notes that you would withdraw. Additionally,
without objection, they are withdrawn.
Additionally, Mr. President, Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, I have FA 236 and 237, both with notes that you would withdraw those.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I have FA 238 from Senator Linehan from Senator Merman with a note that he would withdraw and substitute AM 3382.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator Merman, you're recognized to open on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. AM 3382 is an amendment which was originally LB 1331, which was originally a cleanup brought by the Department of Education. AM 3382 is meant to modernize, clarify, and clean up language in the existing law. The main purpose of this legislation is to allow for better practices of taking attendance. When the attendance laws were written, teachers were, of course, taking this by hand, but now schools commonly have a digital system for this process. School districts, as a result, now have better ways to record and report this data to the Department of Education, so this is generally the point of the legislation. The bill also eliminates some outdated language, clarifies the minimum requirements from other statutes for the issuing of alternative certificates, adds language to match federal language, clarifies the definition of a high ability learner, and ensures the Commissioner of Education receives a report of districts' behavioral awareness training reports. The goal of this bill isn't to create some large legislative change, but more so to clean up the language of already existing truancy laws and other provisions to provide a bit more clarity on some older statutes. The bill had no opponents and came out of the committee 8-0, so I ask for your green vote. Thank you, and I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Senator Merman. Seeing no one else in the queue, you're recognized to close on the amendment and waive. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3382. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
35 ayes, no nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
AM 3382 is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Berman, I have FA 239, 240, both with notes that you wish to withdraw.
Without objection, they are withdrawn.
Mr. President, Senator Walls would move to withdraw and substitute AM 3150 for AM 3234.
So ordered. Senator Walls, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Nope. What do I have to do?
Senator Walls, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion to withdraw and substitute.
Senator Walls, you're recognized to open.
Thank you. Good morning again, colleagues. Today I'm introducing a cleanup bill, AM to AM 3234. Excuse me. To 1284, sorry, as amended by the Education Committee that I introduced on behalf of the governor. Last year, I introduced LR 166, an interim study to review unfunded mandates placed on schools. One of the topics brought up was the length of time required for specific pieces of training passed by the legislature. Over the interim, a group of administrators that work with the governor and his office regarding statutory statutory training requirements. LB 1377 is a result of those conversations. This amendment does several things to clean up the bill. It primarily allows local school boards to set the length of training on several statutory requirements, including behavioral awareness, classroom management, dating violence, etc. This provides flexibility to school boards and school districts based on their needs. For instance, they are able to more easily tailor training if there's a related incident at the school rather than sticking to basic training. During the interim hearing, it was mentioned by both administrators and school board members that having such strict training requirements leads schools to paying for additional days for teachers. This leads to an increased cost in schools. This is a straightforward amendment to clean up the bill. It just provides more flexibility to school districts to make best decisions for their communities. Please vote yes on AM 3234. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Walls. Senator Linehan, you're recognized to speak.
I have an amendment, I think, that comes up, so I'll wait till that comes up.
Thank you, Senator Linehan. Senator Conrad, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Just while we have an opportunity to work through a few, I think, probably more procedural questions rather than substantive, I just wanted to thank Senator Walls for working with Governor Pillen to try and remove needless barriers in our educational structures and systems. As everybody is all too well aware, there's always a lot of movement and energy in the committees and on the floor in the waning days of session to try and figure out a path forward for their bills, for their initiatives, for things they've worked on. Of course, we are constrained by time, but also the human capacity of our incredible team at bill drafters and the clerk's office and all support staff that is working diligently to help us keep pace with all of these fast moving parts and a lot of complexities to both the underlying issues and the technical needs in terms of moving measures through the process as amended. So I know the speaker has put forward some guardrails to help us think about reducing those burdens, and they're necessary in order to make sure that we can continue our work in the remaining days. It does have frustrating and disappointing results for individual senators and other stakeholders that are trying to find a path forward at this late stage. I do not think it's a reflection on the merits of the underlying legislation in any way, shape, or form, and should definitely be reconsidered in future sessions or through other mechanisms. I know we have been talking amongst ourselves this morning about a lot of different bills that maybe aren't going to be able to find a path forward this session, about how we can work together to draft joint letters to state agencies, asking them to perhaps effectuate some of these changes if there are no oppositions in different areas that don't require a law change. We've been thinking creatively about how to utilize our interim studies that will be coming before us. And then, of course, returning senators will have an opportunity to reintroduce, and those friends of ours who are term limited, I know that there's many of us who will be returning the body who stand ready to pick up any legislation that was unfinished this year that enjoyed very, very broad consensus and support, but just unfortunately was unable to move forward just due to time and practical constraints. So I know that Senator Walls has been working really hard with the governor's office to try and find a path forward on this. I know that we're all working through kind of how to consistently apply the speaker's rule in regards to how we take up amendments for the remainder of these legislative days. And again, I think that it's not a reflection on the underlying policy, but it's rather an effort to make sure that all of our work that has consensus can move forward in the precious few remaining days. So I appreciate that any member has a right to object to a request to
1 minute.
swap, to withdraw and swap an amendment, and then that moves to a motion. We don't see that happen frequently in our body, but it does from time to time for good reasons. And I appreciate Senator Slama making it so that we can have a thoughtful kind of reflection about how to apply the Speaker's rule in regards to this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Conrad. Senator Conrad, you're recognized. Speak.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. President. And again, apologies to the body and for taking time on this morning, but as a professional courtesy to some of the primary stakeholders involved in this effort, they asked me to punch in again, so they just have a moment or two more to confer about how to move forward with the amendment. I also just, while that discussion is ongoing, I also wanted to draw the body's attention to LB 1329. This is an Education Committee priority bill. We worked really hard in the Education Committee to bring together a bunch of different important issues that are reflected in LB 1329. I want to thank Senator Merman for his leadership on those issues and fellow committee members for coming forward to help put together an important committee package. Some is generally more technical in nature, more cleanup in nature, and there are important substantive issues that are involved in the committee package as well, that I think we all feel pretty good about moving that forward and understand how important it is. The one piece that I think Senator Merman had agreed to pull back from this morning in terms of an amendment that he had filed on this measure, it was in relation to access and participation in extracurricular activities for homeschool kids. And we heard about this. It was an incredibly compelling hearing at the Education Committee level. And I think that there was a great interest in moving forward and removing barriers so that all kids have an opportunity to engage in extracurricular activities, because we understand the benefits that participation has for all children. And so even though we ran into time constraints with moving that particular bill forward as an amendment to 1329, I know that I'll be working with Senator Merman, Senator Linehan, Senator Clements, and hopefully all members of the Education Committee to figure out how to put our heads together and maybe see if we can't accomplish the same in the interim through rules and regs, through cooperation and collaboration with the Department of Education, the School Boards Association, local schools. I think that members are working very creatively to figure out how to continue advocacy on the issues and how to impact change, even if we're not able to move forward specific bills at this point in the session that otherwise have great consensus support and merit, but are just running into the practical realities of the time constraints and the human capacity of the superhuman people at the bill drafters and the rest of the support staff here. So I'll just go ahead and leave it there and appreciate the body's kind consideration of these measures and listening to me visit a little bit while Senator Walz and the Speaker and others had a chance to confer. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Conrad. Senator Slama, you're recognized to speak.
I'll be very brief about this because I do want to live long enough to see my kids graduate high school. But I raised this objection on the motion to withdraw and substitute on purely procedural grounds. This is a technical amendment. I just don't believe in unanimous consent being acceptable for a withdraw and substitute. This has been traditionally my approach to things. And I cannot withdraw that objection. It's already in. So I'm going to get off. I'd encourage everybody to vote green on the motion to withdraw and substitute and the substituted amendment itself. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Slama. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Walls, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, just to clarify, this is not a new bill. The amendment just restructures the sections because that is what bill drafters asked us to do. So I would ask for a green vote on to support the motion and also to support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Walls. Members, the question is the motion to withdraw and substitute. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
32 ayes, no nays on the motion to withdraw and substitute, Mr. President.
The motion is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Walls would offer AM 3234.
Senator Walls, you're recognized to open and waive. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3234. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
39 ayes, no nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
The amendment is adopted.
Mr. President, Senator Conrad, I have AM 3235 with a note that you would withdraw.
Without objection, it is withdrawn.
Senator Merman, I have FA 322 with a note that you would withdraw that.
So ordered.
Senator Merman, I also have AM 3365 with a note to withdraw.
So ordered.
And Mr. President, Senator Wayne would move to amend with AM 3236.
Senator Wayne, you're recognized to open on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some school districts were reading the mapping bill as that they might have to throw out their books. And this just says to double clarify, to quadruple clarify that you don't have to throw away anything. You can still keep all your same books. You can still use your books, but just show the kids the right map. Teach like the right map. You can still supplement with everything else, so you don't have to throw anything away. Just show them the right map. It's all this amendment does. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator Blood, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually stand in support of Senator Wayne's amendment and in support of the underlying bill. And I just want to say that today is a really good example of why we should not waste time on bills that pertain to hot button topics, because now we have substantial bills that we can no longer get through. I had a bill that was for the school psychologists on behalf of the Department of Defense that we were going to amend onto this that we can no longer amend. I had a bill in reference to no discrimination against our veterans that I can no longer amend onto 1300. Many of the offices have worked for weeks negotiating, making deals, doing their hard work, and now we're here. And we're left with what we're left with. But for me, I just want to get on record that I apologize to all of the veterans that helped support all these bills that we tried to get through this year. Unfortunately, without consent calendar being expanded more so, and now being prevented from amending things on to bills, even though deals were made weeks ago, we can no longer move them forward without permission. And that's where we are at. And I hope that people think about this in the future when they think that priority bills that pertain to 5 Nebraskans are more important than our property taxes, or are more important than our veterans, or more important than helping those that are struggling and need a hand up periodically. So with that, I would yield back any time to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Blood. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Wayne, you're recognized to close on the amendment and waive. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3236. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
Forty-one ayes, no nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
AM 3236 is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, I have nothing further on the bill.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1329 be advanced to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, select file legislative bill 1329A. I have no E&R amendments. Senator Merman would move to amend with AM 3421.
Senator Merman, you're recognized to open on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. AM 3421 brings the cost of 1329 down significantly. Most of the cost comes from the mapping portion for safety. After some discussions, it was decided that the original cost wasn't accurate for a few reasons. Most importantly, the original projection was calculated based upon the assumption that every single school would map their school. In reality, Omaha and Lincoln Public Schools, our 2 biggest districts, are not expecting to do the updated mapping. So that alone eliminates a huge portion of the cost. With that, I'll ask for your green vote so we can save the state some dollars. Thank you, and I'll yield the remaining of my time.
Thank you, Senator Merman. Senator Hansen, you're recognized to speak. And waive. Senator Merman, you're recognized to close on the amendment and waive. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3421. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
38 ayes, 1 nay on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
The amendment is adopted.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1329A be advanced to E&R for engrossing.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, select file legislative bill 1284. I have E&R amendments first of all, Senator.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the E&R amendments to LB 1284 be adopted.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. It is adopted.
Mr. President, Senator Walls would move to amend with AM 3410. Excuse me, 3414.
Senator Walls, you're recognized to open on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. For 2 more minutes, colleagues. Today I'm introducing AM 3414 to LB 1284. I've been working on this amendment over the past few weeks to bring the fiscal note down. As a reminder, LB 1284 has several education measures in it, including providing funding for professional development in computer science and technology and in early literacy, scholarship opportunities for future special education teachers, a pilot project to provide free menstrual products, a grant for dyslexia research, and a few cleanup measures. After this bill moved from general file to select file, I removed one of my bills, LB 1285, which had a high fiscal note. Additionally, Senator Dungan was willing to adjust his bill in this, LB 964, to simply make the current career scholarship available to special education students at the university. This also dropped the fiscal impact, as this would have needed additional administrative cost. I've been working with Senator Linehan to determine the best path forward for both literacy and the dyslexia grant. We've been working with the governor's office on amending the Future Education Future Fund to help ensure we can provide these opportunities to our students. We also lowered nearly all the dollar amount to ask on each piece that had an appropriation. You'll see in AM 3414 that the Education Future Fund is amended to accommodate the funding pieces and the ask that the computer science and technology is lowered to $1 million this fiscal year and $500,000 depending on private funding. We also lowered the ask for the dyslexia grant from $1 million to $500,000 and early literacy from $10 million this fiscal year to $2 million and $2 million for the next 2 years. This brings the dollar amount asked to $3.75 million for this fiscal year. I also want to thank Senator Linehan, Senator Dungan, Senator Conrad, and the governor's office for their help on this. This bill is so important to make sure that we are meeting the ever-changing needs of our students, teachers, and parents. It ensures that we can roll out the computer science and technology graduation requirement and make sure students in every corner of the state are getting great opportunities. It includes making sure we are providing the best possible literacy education we can provide. It boosts research for individuals with dyslexia and helps our low-income students receive menstrual products and not miss out on school. It works to put more special education teachers in classrooms and provides cleanup to statutory teaching assistant programs passed this last session. This amendment and the floor amendment lowers the general fund impact of LB 1284 to only administrative costs for the Teacher in Nebraska Act today. I would ask for your vote, your yes vote on AM 3414 and LB 1284. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Walls. Seeing no one else in the queue, you're recognized to close on the amendment and waive. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3414. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
39 ayes, no nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
The amendment is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Linehan would move to amend with FA 415.
Senator Linehan, you're recognized to open on the floor amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. Floor Amendment 414 is a technical cleanup onto Senator Walls 1284. It reduces the fiscal note and cleans up a drafting area. Currently there's a sentence in the amendment that increases the fiscal note by $5 million. So FA 414 eliminates that provision. So this bill was too costly. So well, first of all, let me back up a second. I'd really like to thank Senator Walls, Chairman Merman, everybody else on the Education Committee. We had several things that came to us. Part of this is to continue the grants to new teachers so we can keep him in teaching the first 5 years. As part of this, there's also a cleanup on if you go back and get a STEM or special ed is another one. You go back and get certificates where we're short on. It helps give grants to those people. It goes right to them. So it helps them keep them in the profession. So it's an effort, again, that we don't fighting against the teacher shortage. I also it's really important to me that Senator Walls was kind enough to include, because this is her priority bill, I do believe, she's kind enough to include funding for dyslexia research grant, and also funding for Nebraska Department of Ed to improve reading programs across the state. We have, there's different programs, and this has been confused because there's curriculum is one thing, that's schools by the curriculum. The Department of Ed, working with the ESUs, is trying to do letters training throughout the state for teachers. So about half students can learn to read with just give them a book, read to them a lot, they'll pick up on it. The other half of the students need more intensive phonics and vocabulary, and they need more help. And we need to go back to that. So the funding in this bill will help the Department of Ed and the ESUs make sure that all our teachers have all the tools they need to make sure we increase reading. And this goes back to the very first year I was here. We had a 3rd grade reading bill, and Senator Patty Penney Brooks helped me with that and dyslexia. So this is kind of the last rah-rah on those things. So I'd really appreciate your green vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Linehan. Seeing no one else in the queue, you're recognized to close on the floor amendment and waive. Members, the question is the adoption of FA 415. All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
40 yeas, no nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
The amendment is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
I have nothing further on the bill, Senator.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1284 be advanced to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, LB 1284A, I have no ENR amendment. Senator Walls would move to amend with AM 3422.
Senator Walls, you're recognized to open on the amendment.
All right. Good morning. Good afternoon, colleagues. AM 3422 and the floor amendment reflect the changes that we made to LB 1284. There's also a floor amendment filed to this to remove the increased dollar amount for the Teach in Nebraska Today Act and the administrative costs for the Department of Revenue. I'm also going to open on the floor amendment that was filed on this as well. It removes the $5 million increase to the Teach in Nebraska Today Act, and again, the administrative costs for the Department of Revenue. Now, the only general fund expenditure out of 1284 is the administrative cost for changing this program with the Department of Education. Please vote yes on the floor amendment, AM 3422 and LB 1284A. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Walls. Seeing no one else in. Senator Linehan, you were in the queue. And waive. Members, the question is the adoption of FA 416. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
37 ayes, no nays on adoption of the floor amendment.
The amendment is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
I have nothing further at this time.
Senator Walls, you're recognized to close on the amendment. And waive. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 3422. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
32 ayes, no nays on adoption of the amendment, Mr. President.
The amendment is adopted. Mr. Clerk.
Senator, I have nothing further on the bill.
Senator Ballard for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that LB 1284A be advanced to ENR for engrossing.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. They are adopted. It is advanced. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, single item amendment to be printed from Senator Von Gillern to LB 1317. And a priority motion, Senator Takei would move to recess the body until 1:10 p.m.
Members, you've heard the motion to recess. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The legislature's in recess.